Okay, everyone, it's time for another writing lesson. I know many of you have already finished your first story. A lot of you actually have already finished the second one, which is great. You need to be writing every day. And it's a really good idea to write right after you read something, especially if you read something that was interesting, that had some words that you liked, or had an idea that might help you make your story better. Today, I want to talk to you about powerful writing moves. Now, a writing move, that's kind of a fancy thing to say. Basically, writing moves are tricks that writers use to make their stories more interesting. And there are some tricks that you can use to make your stories better and more interesting. Of course, I want to read everything you write, but maybe you can improve your stories so that other people would want to read them and then read everything else that you write too. Okay, so you might recognize this page. This is the opening of Owl Moon, which we've talked about a lot. We've read it. And this is what we call a mentor text. And a mentor is a kind of teacher. We keep going back to this book because the author puts so many good things in there that we can use. She has so many good writing ideas that make her stories so good. So we're going to see what she does so that maybe we can do them too. So even though we've already read this, let me read it to you again. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. Okay, this is the opening of the story, and what's interesting about it is that there is almost no action. Really, the only thing that happened was that a train whistle blew. The author mentions that she and Pa went owling, but she hasn't really talked about it yet. That's something that's coming up. She tells us that it's late one winter night, it's past her bedtime, there was no wind, the trees weren't moving, they were still as statues. The moon was bright, the sky seemed to shine. All of those things help us feel like we're there. She's creating the setting. There's really no action. So this is a writing move that you can use. Take your time to write about the setting. Make us feel like we are there. Okay, when you're writing your story about something that you went through, you know what it felt like because you were there, but we weren't there. So take your time. Talk about what it felt like, what it sounded like, what it looked like. Everything you can. You've got plenty of room. If you need an extra page, I'll send home the paper just so you can work on the setting. Okay, it's a very good craft move, a very good writing move, and a lot of the best authors do it. Okay, now you might remember way, way, way back, I told you about a story idea that I had where I saw a blue jay and a squirrel in my backyard. And I wrote it down on a little piece of paper and I made a note to myself so that I could remember to write a story about it later. And I thought my story was finished. And here's part of it. Now, this is kind of in the middle. I looked out of the screen door and saw the blue jay and squirrel staring at each other. Between them was a small mound of birdseed. I opened the door and went onto the deck. I accidentally stepped on a pine cone. The animals were both surprised. The squirrel scurried off, while the blue jay went straight to a high branch. So I was pretty happy with this when I first wrote it, but then I realized Something's not right here. It's like I rushed through it. I opened the door, I went onto the deck, I stepped on the pine cone, and the animals were surprised and they left. Well, I didn't really take my time to explain all of this, and I really feel like there was a special moment here. I could have added more information somewhere in here. So I thought about it, like you should look at your writing and think about it, and I asked myself what I could do to make it better, what I could do to stretch the moment out a little bit. And here's what I came up with. Now let me read what I have. You see all that writing in blue. This is what I added. This is the moment that I stretched out. I looked out of the screen door and saw the blue jay and squirrel staring at each other. Between them was a small mound of birdseed. I opened the door and went onto the deck. I was barefoot because I didn't want to startle the animals. This helped me make quiet steps, but the cold morning air made my toes feel numb pretty quickly. It was a big change from the warm kitchen and hot oatmeal on the table behind me, but I dared not make a sound. I never took my eyes off of the animals, who had not taken their eyes off of each other. It was so quiet. I thought I could hear the squirrel breathing rapidly through its nose. One of them was going to do something. Maybe they would race to get the seeds first. Maybe they would fight. It was a showdown, and I had a front row seat. I stepped quietly, just to get close enough for a better look. I was so focused on them that I did not watch my silent step. Now just imagine if I paused there. You feel like something's coming up. Don't you feel like something is about to happen, but I haven't told you yet? Okay, so if you go back up to the black text, I opened the door and went onto the deck. I didn't tell you what happened after that just yet. I told you that I was barefoot, that I was making quiet steps, that the morning was cold and my feet were numb, but the kitchen behind me was warm and the oatmeal on the table was hot, and the animals were just looking at each other. I'm building up to this moment. Something is about to happen. So now I'm going to start from the last blue sentence. I was so focused on them that I did not watch my silent step. I accidentally stepped on a sharp pine cone and yelped in pain. The animals were both surprised. The squirrel scurried off while the blue jay went straight to a high branch. Okay, so I took my short writing, which was all the black text that we had seen on the previous slide, and I added this blue text to make the moment seem longer, to add more detail, to make you feel like you were there too. Can you imagine being inside where it's warm and you're eating something really warm, and then you go outside and it's cold and your feet feel a little numb and you're trying to be quiet? Okay, that's the feeling that I wanted to share with you. So this is what you can do also. Okay, so this writing move is stretch out a good moment and make us wonder what will happen next. Okay, so find a good spot in your story where you can make it seem a little bit longer. Just slow it down a little bit. Give us time to get into it and feel like we're there also. It's almost like if you ever watch an old scary movie, nobody just opens a door. No, the hand goes slowly to the doorknob and they turn it and you can hear it click, and then you'll hear something like this. Okay, the door creaks open. And they do that on purpose. They're trying to make you wonder what will happen next. They're stretching that moment out. Okay? All right, that's two moves. Let's go on to another one. Okay, so we want to be sure we make a good comparison. Okay, so we've got three moves that we've talked about today, three writing moves. One was take your time to set up the setting. There's no rush to move on to the next action. Talk about everything that was around, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feeling. Okay, and we talked about stretching out that special moment. When you finally get to that moment where something interesting is about to happen, wait a little bit. Build up to it slowly. Take your time. Okay, talk about everything that happened right before the big moment. Make your reader get kind of excited. Like, oh, I hope the story doesn't end here. Right? You want them to feel that way. And finally, make sure you make a good comparison. Okay? Like we said here with the tomato and the waves. The tomato doesn't make any sense, but the waves, that was a pretty good comparison. Okay, girls and boys, my favorite writers on the planet, make sure you keep writing. Try some of these moves in your writing. Go back, look at your story, see what you can add. Stretch it out, add detail. Make other people say, hey, that's a great story. It's really interesting. You should read it. Okay, that's it for now. The end.